But me magic is real. And so when you put the intentions on things, and then if I were to take it to a next level, this is like a philosophy that I'm really working on, we always hear that the Bible is the living word. The Bible is the living word. In alchemy, with intention, if I walked through fields and I found different trees and different forests and different woods, and I took those trees and I ground them all up with different herbs and maybe shards of different metals, and I made a papyrus paper or some kind of thing, and then I took a quill. And with that quill, out of a little metal jar that I put my ink into from a different living thing, and I dipped my quill and I wrote my words on that book. And then when I took all those papers and pressed them together and I bind them with a spine, I wrap them with flesh, I'm creating a living word. And I keep pushing this on podcasters and anyone with a microphone or anyone that feels their golden throat chakra that they're going to speak. You are the living word of God. So when we take our full idea and do this spell and write it into books, we're creating a living word. And when other people read that, they're taking our magic and they're, with the law of observation, now observing what you just wrote, they're creating a thing.
Welcome to the One-on-One Podcast with your host, Juan Ayala.
Two, one. Welcome back to another episode of the One Podcast. I'm your host as always. Make sure to check me out on social media at the One Podcast. Join the Telegram, all that good stuff. Make sure to get your copy of The Chosen One on my website, the101podcast.com. Get it on there. Issue number 1. We are working on issue number 2. That should be out soon. And also the Occultist Monday. Make sure to get your copy of that. Esoteric and Occult Journal, written with a few different people in the community. And I would love for you to write something for that, Chaney. So let me know if you're interested in that. And today's guest, I'm very excited to talk to her because I love the way that she thinks. She's got a great podcast. And she goes hard in the paint on a lot of topics that people are not really talking about, connections that aren't really made. And that's what I'm all about, right? I'm all about making connections that other people don't see. Reading between the lines. That's why I think symbolic literacy is so important, because it literally shapes your reality, in my opinion. And today we have Chaney from Project Chaney. What's up?
Hey, I'm excited to finally be here. Fellow Florida kid.
That's right. Fellow Florida woman, right? You're in the, what did people really like my comment about Florida having just the tip of the Bermuda Triangle, which drives people insane.
Yeah, I actually, I'm a Florida history nerd, and I believe we are probably Atlantis. So I would say I'm a homegrown Atlantean.
Florida's a really special place, right? There's something about the atmosphere. And whenever I go out anywhere else, I can't picture, and I don't know what it is, I can't picture myself living anywhere else that is not Florida, that is not here. There's just something about this place that draws me to it. I've been to different states and I'm like, can I picture myself living here? You know, can you sometimes just try to imagine yourself in a certain place, and I just can't. It always comes back here. And even other parts of Florida, I think the central Florida part is there's something about it. I don't know if you've experienced that before, but you've lived other places, no?
I've lived other places. I'm an Atlantic seaboard girl. I was born in Palm Beach and raised in Vero Beach. Vero Man, the mastodons and bones and things like that are right there. And Palm Beach, you know, we have everybody's favorite president right there in Mar-a-Lago, which is a whole other dig, no pun intended, all to itself. And yeah, I've been totally geeking out on your shows with Dr. Longo of recent. I think it's really good stuff, but I'm biased, but I think we have the coolest history here.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot more stuff is happening here than anyone would know. And I think all of the little pieces of even the symbology of stuff you were saying, like it's part of our who we are religious wise, it's part of our belief systems, it's part of our history. And I just am like homunculus is your thing. My number one thing is Mary, like the key to the Marys, the sea, the myrrh, the mar, the more. And so Florida has, we're surrounded almost by ocean. So it has all the symbology I need to geek out on my favorite,
Where
pretext.
can people find your stuff, Chaney, before we get too far into it? Where can they look for you if they want to find you?
They can go to projectchaney.com or Chaney_in_Wonderland on Instagram. They do have to type in the whole thing because I am pretty shadow banned, and they'll probably get 3 warnings before they follow me. And send me the warning. If you get a picture and you decide to follow me, screenshot it and send it to me. I'm saving a file of all of the warnings. But you can also find me at Project Chaney or Chaney Project on Twitter.
Awesome. Yeah, so check her out. She's got really great stuff. And yeah, we've podcasted together before. I think probably 2 different times maybe on, I know, Chance's show for sure. I don't know about the Weaving Spiders. Maybe the Weaving Spiders, but for sure Chance's show. And this is really great. I didn't know about this Vero man. So refers to a set of fossilized human bones found near Vero, now Vero Beach, Florida in 1915 and 1916. The human bones were found in association with those of the, I can't even say that word, animals. The question of whether humans were present in Florida or anywhere in the Americas during this period of time was controversial. Wow. Where are the bog people? Do you know where the bog people are? Is this near this? You ever heard of the bog people?
But I do know you said Central Florida, and if Disney doesn't buy not valuable land, so it's like you have probably one of the biggest keystones if you were to plan some sort of new world order, some United Kingdom. You would have to say that Walt Disney is one of the pillars of that creation. And Disney World is the size of a poker table to Disneyland being the size of the chip on that table. And so, yeah, where you're at must be a magical place in Florida as well to have the swamp there.
I think you're absolutely right, because the correlations, and I wonder if Disney World and Disneyland and Tokyo Disney or Disney Tokyo, whatever, if they're on the same ley line, because we obviously with Gabriel's Tarot Tories, we've talked about Florida and California both being the phalluses, right? And the 2 pillars. And you have Orange County in California, which also has Disneyland, and then Orange County here in Florida that has Disney World. So there's this mirroring of realities, and I don't think they do it by mistake. It's all done by design, and that's what I had this comment as of recently where there was this guy, and he's probably a Freemason or a Rosicrucian or whatever, who cares? But he was like, hey, what does it matter if the elites are practicing magic on us? Why don't you just acknowledge it and get over it? I go, oh, okay, that's fine. So get over it. He's like, they're worshiping their gods how everybody else is. So let me guess, your grandpa's a Freemason or something, guy? Like, what are you trying to advocate at here, bro? That it's okay for others to, without you being willingly to participate in their magic ritual, it's okay for them to just do it to you and just turn a blind eye to. Like, no, we have to wake people up. And that's why I always talk about it, because yes, it's cliche to be saying, oh, the Illuminati this, the Illuminati that, but it's the truth. It's not just I think the Illuminati's thrown out there so much. I consider it, like the Gnostics, a blanket term, right? The Illuminati is like a blanket term of the lizard people. And if they're actual lizards or not, I don't No, I like to
I always
think
say
that they
the
are.
evil they in quotes because I know people get triggered where they're like, it's bigger than bad and good. It's dark and light and blah, blah, blah. And it's like everybody wants to dissect where you have to qualify now, even in our field where we're all quote unquote woke and we all now you just have to qualify every word so much that people can't philosophize the bigger idea. It's like we're so combative with each other. And I'm like, this is not how they used to teach things in school like philosophy so your brain could learn how to flow with ideas and not be so cemented in things. And so many people, whatever they know most about now is their new religion, and then no matter what they're looking into, they turn all the things toward that religion of thought because it's intelligent if they have the words to talk about the thing, and everybody likes to hear themselves talk, so it's like
It's like smelling your own farts is how Paranoid American puts it. He's like, yeah, you can't be smelling your own farts all the time, bro. And it's true. Right? You want to hear. I think some people do enjoy themselves. They like to hear themselves talk. And I mean, I listen to my own podcast, so I guess I don't know if that counts as the same thing, but I got called out, I guess, for, oh, well, you need to accept Jesus in your life and you're talking too much blasphemy and all this heretical talk. And I go, well, the joke's on you because I believe in God. I just don't want to subscribe to the dogma and the psychological abuse that mainstream religion puts you through. You know what I mean? It's like, I accepted Jesus in my life a long time ago. You know, I never stopped believing in him, but I can discuss other ideas and be a scholar. And you know what I mean? I look at it from a scholarly point of view, but people, as like you're saying, some people are too tied up in the wording and in the language aspect of it. And they believe if you mention something that you automatically believe it, oh, you're going to hell. Like, dude, yeah. No, we're having a conversation. You're listening to a podcast about stuff. So
I say it right at the beginning of my show. It's okay to change your mind. And you're allowed to say words out of your mouth. Sometimes one of the great things about us having these mics is we have the ability to hear ourselves think. Like we're thinking and words come out and then it hits your ears and you add to my thought process. And sometimes we're like going through all these emotions aloud so other people are hearing a word for their emotion for the first time. And sometimes once you hear it like 100 monkeys, it becomes an innate learned thing in all of us. And so I just think, people, the tighter they hold on to their doctrine of whatever it is, it's so much fear. And I am a person, because I know a lot of people, wherever their religious trauma comes from, they'll hate that doctrine. So their whole goal will just be like, every way that I can pick apart the Bible, every way I can pick apart the Torah, every way I can pick apart the Quran, every way I can pick apart Hinduism. And I just think there's probably a puzzle piece in every single one of these things that are really beautiful. And I love them all. I am a lover of all the religions. My God, my aperture, my connection to source doesn't require that I'm have to worship or follow or do the same things of whatever anyone else is called to do. But it doesn't mean I don't think it's beautiful. And I also don't allow people to blasphemize any religions if I have anything to do about it. Like if somebody's hating on any one thing too much, where it's just like, they're like, that's all witchcraft. That's all witchcraft. That's all witchcraft. I'm like, well, what's wrong with witchcraft? That's all Christianity, Christian doctrine, Catholic. Wait. Catholic's different than Christian. That's different than Protestant. It's different than Baptist. Like if we're going to start talking about these things, it's funny to me how many people will hate on us having a discussion about their religion, yet you and I will know more about their good book than they do.
Yeah, that's another one, right? And I've seen it. I grew up my entire life in the church, so I was able to see even how the people in the church were manipulating the scripture to fit their agenda, right? Like, because that's the whole thing. It's so open for interpretation, and I can appreciate how you're saying all these different bits and pieces because they're talking about the same thing. I think that they're talking about the same thing. You mentioned earlier about Florida perhaps being Atlantis. I've done shows with Narco Alongo where he talks about Florida being the Garden of Eden and all these things. One of the very first keys, Fort Jefferson, was on Garden Key, one of the first lighthouses here in the state of Florida. Garden Key. Well, it's an interesting name. And guess who found it? Oh, Ponce de Leon Well, I think Ponce de Leon is an alchemical pun of some sort because it's Pounce of the Lion, right? Ponce de Leon, then is that the lion that eats the sun, the alchemical lion that eats the sun, or what are we getting at? And then you have the whole conspiracy, and I commented on your photo about Christopher Columbus perhaps being Saint Germain. There was also that rabbit hole that I went down one day with homie Romy, where again I think it's all connected, but they're all drawing in from the same story, from the same figures, I think, where you have Buddha, Vishnu, Krishna, Jesus Christ, whoever you want to call him, that being, that entity, if he was an ascended master or some crazy adept or whatever, you just don't know because it's his story. It's his story. So the guys that won are the guys that are writing what's in the history books. The people who oppose them are dead. You know what I mean? Like, they're dead. The people who are publishing are the ones that survived. You don't think they're going to be a little bit biased? Hey, let's not talk about the king, or let's not talk about the queen at this point in time. Let's write good about them. They conquered, and these other people were, how you're saying, they were pagans, and they put down that they were cannibals. Yeah, they were cannibals. They were eating each other, and the whole time they're just projecting their own things onto the enemy. And it, you know what I mean? Like, there's that aspect of it too. And I think, religion is the biggest conspiracy.
Well, I actually think the Catholics, this is so weird. I think the Catholics get hate they don't deserve, when the Catholic Church as we know it right now is nothing but pagans and Protestants pretending they're Catholics. Like, it's all still because I'm a Mary person. So Mary, Queen of Scots, was killed by her cousin Elizabeth. And Elizabeth took Mary's son, King James, and rewrote the doctrine and rebound it in a book and sent it out to the masses. And that became, the Christianity that so many people knew and loved. But really, it was just like, putting a president's face on a dollar bill. Here, King James on your Bible. Will you take it now?
Can you repeat that? You just blew my mind. So what did Elizabeth have to do with the King James version of the Bible? Because I know he was the, successor, right? When they come after, or is that predecessor? Predecessor is before, successor is after, correct? Do you know?
I think so. Yeah. I think
anyways,
so. Predecessor.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
So King James came after Queen Elizabeth. And the reason I know that is because of the whole John Dee thing, because he hated John Dee's guts. But what'd you say about the Bible and her having her hand in that? Did she really? I didn't know about that.
Yeah, like Mary, the Queen of Scots, so Scotland. So even when Queen Elizabeth, that we know now, Queen Elizabeth II, when they pulled her through the streets of Scotland, they added to that 10-day ritual. They made it, Operation Unicorn instead of London Bridge falling, because the extra days are if she died in Scotland specifically. And so when they took her through the streets and called her Queen of Scots, Elizabeth, Queen of Scots, it hit me in my crawl somewhere so weird, because she was never the Queen of Scotland. Like, it was like that whole story in history is where everything gets so blurry. And she was kind of an illegitimate heir to the throne back then. So Henry VIII is her
She was
father.
a half-sister. She was a half-sister of Tudor, correct?
She was, Anne Boleyn was her mom. So she was just the mistress's daughter. And Anne Boleyn, I believe she gets decapitated too. I think the only one of his wives that doesn't get decapitated might be the first wife that he was actually with. But then there's all this blend of the church back then and whether or not they can allow him to get divorced. But you have this idea of, Skull and Bones, where they're saving skulls of things to keep their power. And we always know about his 8 wives. So one of the wives, or I don't know if he ever even marries Anne Boleyn. I don't know enough about that part of the Tudors. I need to rewatch it again or read more stuff. But I know it actually, I love shows like that have all this kind of history shoved in, and they're like, here's a bunch of sex, but then your brain's like, oh my God, I retained it.
It's because of that mind palace, because the more outlandish it is, the easier it is to remember. And I think that's also maybe programming by trauma in a way, because you remember all your, some people do remember their most traumatic moments, because again, it's so vivid that it's imprinted in their mind. But that's also a part of the art of memory and rhetoric, where the more outlandish it is in your mind palace, the easier it is to recall it later on when you're trying to remember it in whatever setting. So I think that's part of that. It's like,
yeah, it's interesting, those shows like that. I'm like,
it's like a Game of Thrones or
yeah,
the House of Dragons that I've been watching as of recently.
I have too. It's pretty, I like it. I think I was started out where I was going to be like, and I'm like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah, no,
All right, I'm in.
I had a bad attitude towards it at the beginning too, because I just wish if they have all this money, right? Why not just finish the original series how it was intended to be finished, and then start a spinoff? It's not that you didn't run out of money. It's like you just rushed it, ended it, and then you're jumping into all these other projects. Just finish the first one legitimately, and then jump into something. That's what makes me mad. So I was kind of angry, but it's pretty great so far. And
I was a Game of Thrones nerd, like from way back when. Like I was a person that waited every episode for the next episode. I didn't mind waiting, and it was a craft, and I didn't mind words and monologues and details and these kind of things. And I felt like as the show went on and more normie people jumped on, and Twitter and their Instagram and their Facebook started to have a say-so in the show, it became a garbage piece of action-filled trash that I'm like, oh, this ruins it a little. This isn't how it was supposed to be. And they changed the storyline just enough at the end that I'm like, oh, this whole thing, this is how they do it.
Yeah. And I think I've always talked about the cinemagicians in Hollywood, how they're trying to use, because it's all about the subconscious, right? Programming the subconscious. Because I forgot the statistic, but the statistic is that a certain amount of percentage is a good amount, a big amount of your decisions are all taken by the subconscious. So when they're programming the subconscious, they're targeting something that you don't really know what's going on, but you know what I mean? It's autonomous. So it's working in the background. And what do all these occultists talk about when it comes to like sex magic and all these things where you bring forth the subconscious and implant these sigils into it, and then it goes back into the back into your body or whatever it may be. But at that euphoria point, at that peak point of orgasm or whatever point it is, you're one with the universe. You know, your soul is one with this bigger being, and by you implementing and marking it with these sigils, you know, you put that intention out there and it manifests itself quicker. So I think that's why these shows make us feel the way that they make us feel, right? You go through these emotions, you're experiencing it. They're literally shaping and molding your reality real time as you're sitting there, as you're relating with these characters, as you're taking them on again, like some sort of homunculus that just become their own living beings. And there was this one particular interview that I saw of Cersei, the main bitch right in that show, where everybody hated her. And
she was really one of the greatest villains of all time.
Yeah.
Greatest villains of all time with the least romantic death. She deserved a better death than the death those show writers gave her because she was such a killer villain.
It got to the point where somebody went to do a meet and greet and they skipped her because they hated her. Right? That it's like she's an actor. She's a vessel for this other thing. I think that's what. And you mentioned the whole. I talk about the immortal alchemist, and you said something in one of your latest shows that blew my mind that I want to get into. Let me write it down before I forget. And I think that I've always talked about, I think it was maybe Andy from the Deep Share podcast that we talked about it, where he was doing a counter argument to what I was saying about taking incorporeal ideas and manifesting them. Well, if you really I think that's what the Platonic solids served a purpose for. I think that these ancients, they were so obsessed with turning their ideas into the Platonic solids or Archimedean solids, whatever it was. They wanted to take from the OG metaverse, right, that Plato talked about, the theory of forms and this universe of forms, and capture something and put it down into paper or a certain medium and manifest it. So if you think about a story, how it's just that. They're cinemagicians for a reason. They're practicing magic and they're manifesting things by taking these characters that are just in the ether and they're putting them together and building this ethereal palace and universe. Look at Harry Potter, look at Lord of the Rings, look at Game of Thrones, look at all these crazy universes within universes within universes. Look at Westworld, right? Where they are literally taking these ideas and injecting them into actors and recording it and putting together a coherent story. And I think that's their golem. That's their manifestation. That is the magic. That is real. I think that's real magic. They've always said it, right? The Disney World, the magic of the screen, or whatever they call it. You know what I mean? Like you feel the magic. They always talk about movies being magic. Well, why such a word? Why are you saying these words? You know, why are you spelling these things out? Well,
on a silver screen.
On a silver screen, you got the Lion's Gate.
Yeah. It's meme magic is real. This really hits people in a way, I think, like in a simple form. Like you say things like sex magic and they're already like, oh, such a big idea. Like meme magic's real. And so then I try to even make it more simple for people. And I'm like, a voodoo doll is real. If you put your intention into anything, and then that intention, if I can get somebody else in science to observe that thing, it changes the particles inside that thing. So if I tell them it's magic and they observe the magic and they have any fear or love of what I just said, they've added to the magic of the thing. And two in my name it shall be. These are all just simple spells out of different books. And so if I take a meme and a simple form of this is Epstein didn't kill himself. The only reason that exists in the zeitgeist is because a meme magician made a meme once and put it out there, and it became one phrase of a perfect marketing tagline, and it impermeated into all of our zeitgeist. And the only reason anyone knows that is because some digital soldier made a meme once. But meme magic is real. And so when you put the intentions on things, and then if I were to take it to a next level, this is like a philosophy that I'm really working on, is we always hear that the Bible is the living word. The Bible is the living word. In alchemy with intention, if I walked through fields and I found different trees and different forests and different woods, and I took those trees and I ground them all up with different herbs and maybe shards of different metals, and I made a papyrus paper or some kind of thing, and then I took a quill, and with that quill out of a little metal jar that I put my ink into from a different living thing, and I dipped my quill and I wrote my words on that book. And then when I took all those papers and pressed them together and I bind them with a spine, I wrap them with flesh, I'm creating a living word. And I keep pushing this on podcasters and anyone with a microphone or anyone that feels their golden throat chakra that they're going to speak. You are the living word of God. So when we take our full idea and do this spell and write it into books, we're creating a living word. And when other people read that, they're taking our magic and they're, with the law of observation, now observing what you just wrote, they're creating a thing. So all of this is true. So when you're watching the TV or listening to the radio and we get into those states of flow state and we're allowing them to put ideas into us, it's the same as something simple like Florida Man. We all think Florida Man. We all have an instant idea of what we think. They did that perfectly 20 years ago on purpose so we would get to this point now and everyone would allow New York City and Los Angeles to lead the whole entire flow, because the third biggest population in the country that you never hear about is the Florida Man. So if they can get everyone to think they're fucking dumb and everyone to think that they're stupid, then you guys won't really pay attention to that the Florida Man's the only one in your country that's going without power 2 weeks out of every year. They all have generators. They have food in their backyard. Most of them know how to fish. Most of them know how to start a fire. So the real stupidity is everybody thinking the Florida Man's stupid, when how many California folk and how many New York folk can do everything a Florida Man can do? So look at the one free place in the whole world for the last few years. It's an alchemy, it's an energy, and they all wanted you to think different of it. But maybe I'm just a child of Atlantis.
No, I think you're right. I think we are built differently, and there is the way I've heard it put is memetic occultism, where they use propaganda to speak to the soul, and it goes back into the arts and what the arts were used for back then, and how Plato talked about, hey, let's limit these arts. Let's limit the way that people are listening to music, the way that they're looking at these plays, because it's inspiring them to break out of Plato's cave. Right? It's inspiring them to think outside the box. Like, we don't want that. There's certain frequencies. They understood that certain frequencies, certain colors, and certain settings were affecting the way that you look at your reality. And they wanted to limit that from the very beginning. But we got to remember where Plato got his stuff from. He got it from Pythagoras, and where Pythagoras got his stuff from. So there's always a line that you can trace it back down. And absolutely, I do think that, right, the Florida man is, sometimes I'm actually, and I don't know if it's indoctrination or what it is, but sometimes when I see like a really dope article about some crazy ass shit that happened in some state, I'm kind of disappointed when it's not in Florida. Is that a thing? Like, I'll see like some crazy headline, like, oh man, in Ohio or in Texas or I'm like, man, that sounds like a Florida man thing that would happen here. Like, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but some crazy, just whatever, I don't know, some crazy thing that happened. But yeah, I think that we're pretty self-sufficient here. I could eat wild boar probably for the rest of my life if I had to. Wild boar sausage is delicious.
Here's another crazy thing. How many races do you fear or not know being a Florida person?
How many races do I fear?
You fear or not know. I probably could just name a random race and you have a friend of that race.
Yeah.
Without even thinking twice about it. It's not because it's your real African friend different than your Detroit African friend. It's not because it's different than your Puerto Rican friend or your Mexican from California friend different than your Texas Mexican friend, different than your Texas Miami friend who's not Cuban. You know, like, it's like in Florida, if the United States, I grew up where we used to be called the mixing pot. It was like beautiful that you could just come here and work hard and become a thing. And no matter what it was, we could integrate it, and it was all this beauty. I think if we're a stew, Florida's the roux. Like, you can boil down the rest of the country, all the water gets out. It's Florida. Everything's happening here. It doesn't matter if you hear, oh, well, you know, the Jews in New York, we got more in Florida. Like, oh, well, you know, the Puerto Ricans, and no, we have more in Florida.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, the Cubans, we got more in Florida. Like, yep, we got rednecks, and we got rednecks on farms and rednecks on boats. But you know, all a redneck means is the same thing all a wetback means. That person works hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get a redneck. That's how you get a wetback. But all those things are all racist to you now because Americans don't know how to work hard anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But a Florida man does.
Yeah. And I just had Tripoli call me Mexican, which is fine. I'm not Mexican. I'm Puerto Rican, but I love Mexicans too. And I respect Mexicans because they're hard workers, and Puerto Ricans are lazy. So, you know, I respect that. So I got called a Mexican on Tinfoil Hat, and he called my show Juan to Juan, but it's all good, right? I think that's expected of Tripoli, where he doesn't kind of like
call him Turkish on accident, and that he'll be like, what? The Turkish took out my Armenian people.
He doesn't like remember things correctly, so it's like, it's all right, you know what I mean? He's getting older now, but I love Tripoli. He's awesome, and
he is awesome.
Absolutely, I think it is a melting pot. But this whole identity politics and all these things that they implement in society, I think that's part of the psyop. I think that's part of their game, where they want to divide us with bullshit. If you really think about it, it's we're all the same. We're all one people. What separates us? What culture? I mean, you can implement yourself in a different culture if you had to, or learn a different culture. That's all it really is. But we all bleed the same. We're all, 6 feet under. We all decompose the same. And that's one of the things that I've learned from working with people like Paranoid American and other podcasters. Like, some people take themselves too seriously. And this whole identity politics, I think it's really hurting everything, because you can be non-sectarian. You don't have to adhere to one set of, like, back to what we were talking about at the beginning. You don't have to adhere to one set of principles and die by that sword. You can branch out, and how you said, keep an open mind. You don't have to marry one idea. And I think people are just so set on that, where it's like, what are you supposed to do? Like, if you're either an outcast, you know, either you hate it or love it. It's like, no, you can be in between. I don't know what to say to you, you know? And I think that by them polarizing us, right? We have the blue, how I mentioned with Plato and the colors and all this, we have the blue and the red and all these things where it's like right now people are probably so triggered that I have a red hat on. And if they knew, they assume they know what the hat says. And I promise you don't know what the hat says. You know what I mean? Like, because we've been programmed to the
trigger.
The words.
I just saw it right away, and I was just like, I need to go get my QAnon shaman hat on. I was just like, whoop, insurrectionist.
But think about again, back to word magic, back to casting spells and all these things. Think about how they were able to program people to think that the words "Make America Great Again" are evil and racist and disgusting, and they will literally attack you in the streets if you wear a hat that resembles anything like that. What's the bell that they ring for what's that experiment where he rings the bell and the dog starts to, it's got a name, I forgot the name of it. Something's dog.
I know what you're talking about though.
I'll look it up.
Where it's like it gets hungry or something every time the bell rings. Maybe it's not hunger, but I know they try it with different animals too, and they always talk about fair chickens, how they can beat people.
Pavlov.
Oh, the Pavlov bell.
Pavlov dog experiment, where it's showed the dogs could be conditioned to salivate at the sound of a bell if that sound was repeatedly presented at the same time that they were given food. So they use, I believe, obviously the media for this thing. Where did you hear about when they were augmenting the orange on Trump's face? So taking the color orange and making it to where it's a trigger for people. Again, back to the red.
Or Trayvon Martin, were dependent on what magazine you looked at. Sometimes Zimmerman looked like he was Mexican, dark Mexican, and sometimes he looked like he was white, and sometimes Trayvon Martin looked lighter, and sometimes he looked darker, or like O.J. Simpson on the cover of magazines, depending on what magazine you picked up. His mugshot was like really light-skinned or really dark-skinned, because we're all like triggered deep down for these things.
And they test it out too, right? They'll adjust it and see how it performs. I'm sure a lot of these big companies, like look at Amazon and the New York Times. Is it the New York Times? He owns one of those big, I think it's the New York Times. He owns one of the biggest newspaper.
Washington Post. Yeah.
The Washington Post. Yes. I might have gotten that wrong. Whatever. Fact check me. I don't give a shit. But anyways, he owns a big newspaper company. One of the most powerful and richest men in the world. How is that okay? How they're not going to post anything bad about this guy on his own newspaper. So when these conglomerates, they own all these companies, I'm sure if they own a bunch of newspapers, they're seeing how it performs. Like, look, we printed it a little bit darker on this one and it kind of triggered some people to buy some more here and on these. But then again, I'm thinking right now, who the fuck buys magazines anymore? Is there people buying magazines nowadays?
They're probably just there because I feel like the edge of our flow state is the most dangerous spot. It's like your subconscious. You were bringing up sex magic earlier, and I was, like when people, like when porn is free and you're jerking off and you're coming, the outline of what you're getting off to is not the thing you're looking at. It's the thing in your subconscious, and it's always one line past your perversion state of yesterday. So every time that you're getting off to free porn, the list of things on the side or the pictures that they're showing you is shit you didn't look up. It's perversities you're not into, sexualities you're not into. You're into the normal thing, but it's still on the side. And that's the stuff that's getting in your brain. So the next time you go look at porn, it's a little darker. And the next time you go look at porn, it's a little darker. And, you lock yourself in your house for 2 years. All of a sudden, you're looking at stuff that's so borderline perverse that now they work in all this cannibalism. They work in all this because then it all blurs. So if there is such a thing which we know there is. Some people even are like, that's such conspiracy, adrenochrome. That's such conspiracy that people want to drink melanin, or whatever's going on. It just blurs the waters. It's like without us even knowing it, like whether it's black or white, like just a little. I always think like the evil they is doing two things at once that we don't even know, two birds at one time, where they're making us think something's dangerous and something's crazy or something's good but it's not for 20 years that we'll notice it in our zeitgeist, or 10 years. I mean, it's all getting faster and faster, but it's like little magic spells that they're playing with our subconscious. Like we're talking now, underneath all the words that are going on underneath the scroll, that's the stuff that'll sit in people's brain without them, like Limitless. When you that movie where he's calling the fact in his brain and he saw it in the back of like a bottom of an article somebody else was reading. That's how your brain's working. It's taking in everything always.
So am I subconsciously programming people by having that banner at the bottom?
It's perfect.
Wow, that's amazing. But that, you bring up a really, hey, listen, for those that like furry porn, listen, whatever you do behind closed doors, whatever you enjoy behind closed doors, that's on you. That's
if you grown doing it to grown, you're allowed.
Exactly. And that's what I tell people all the time. I go, as long as you don't hurt yourself or hurt others, then so be it. You could worship.
Or you're allowed to hurt yourself and others if you're both grown and it's decided upon, and you're a biter, or if you want to scratch or draw the occasional, whatever weirdness, as long as you're both grown, do you?
I suppose. I mean, I wouldn't advise. Well, it's like, yeah, it's like you get more and more deprived. And I think what porn has been one of the biggest biological, maybe not biological, but one of the biggest weapons that they use to really quite literally impregnate the minds of people. And like you said, you start inching closer and inching closer. It's like, I wonder what a BBC gangbang is about. So let me click on that. It's like, I'm not even into that. You know what I mean? But let me start clicking here and start diving down these. And it's the whole, I don't know.
Well, how many of us Mr. Hands or Two Girls, One Cup? None of us were into that. It was just part of our zeitgeist. Mr. Hands.
Which one was that one?
Putting stuff out there to like the guy that gets killed because he gets rammed by a Sagittarius. He's a Sagittarius man. He gets fucked by a horse and it kills him.
Whoa, is that the documentary or is that a different one?
I don't know if there's a documentary. It was just around the same time Two Girls, One. It's a total Joe Rogan thing. Bropra. I call him Bropra because he is the CIA agent no one's allowed to talk about because they have some dream they're going to get on Joe Rogan, which is the same reason that most Republicans always vote against their best interest because they think they're going to be a billionaire one day. It's like that same mentality of like, we're all going to turn a blind eye to this one thing, even though it's as Hollywood as everything else, but we're going to pretend he's the good guy too because it's some of it feels true.
But I had a dream that I was on Rogan one time, Chaney. Does that mean anything?
Maybe you were battling him in the astral. Maybe you're unpolluting the minds that he's polluting.
He would kick my fucking ass if I was to fight him in the astral realm.
No, he's only like 2 feet tall.
He's a homunculus. He's a little grown man.
He's totally
it's gonna be
is the homunculus. Everybody thinks it's Danny DeVito. It's Brogan.
That's gonna be the name of the episode. Hold on, Joe Rogan.
I mean, if you pick a part of the zeitgeist, whether it's a Neil deGrasse Tyson, an election thievery, normalizing PCR tests, you pick the quote unquote bad guy from Jack Dorsey being on Rogan while he's paying Rogan to talk about how clean Twitter
Whatever
is.
happened to that guy? Is that guy still alive? Like, nobody talks about him anymore? Did he ascend to the next dimension or what's going on? It's like he stepped down as CEO and
I don't know. Goes on a boat with Jay-Z and then we never hear from him again.
On a boat with Jay-Z, so he's like somewhere out with L. Ron Hubbard and some what's that one? The Atlas Shrugged, the something Gorge or something like that. The metaphysical valley somewhere in Colorado.
Oh yeah, I think all of America is the center. I think this is where everything started. I'm kind of one of those people. I think what makes more sense, that everyone started in Africa and then picked the one person in the tribe that looked like them. And then they went to a place and only had kids with each other. So everybody there looked like them. And then we named the country after all the people that look like us. Or we all come from a place where all the people look different. And then we choose some of those people and go out to other places where now they all look like us. So I'm like, Rome is DC, Florida's Atlantis, Israel. I go back and forth sometimes on what parts I think that is, but I think there's like a good feeling that like there's an Egypt vibe about like Nashville. I think the Mormons were actually Moors, so Salt Lake was an actual Salt Lake, and the Vikings came in, the Six Kings, and like traded in Salt Lake. So I think their religion was probably stolen and bastardized by the Mormonism we know now.
Mormonism is bullshit. That's the one with the golden tablets, isn't it?
Where it like mixes space and magic underwear and
it's like when you can Google and find a picture of the guy on Google, like an actual picture, that's a cult. Like that's the way I see it. If I can Google and see a picture, like a real life picture of L. Ron Hubbard, it's like, oh, that's a cult. Or even Mormonism.
I think it's like a rewriting of history almost, though, where it's like we think they're evil. Like we know the news is lying. We know history is probably a bigger lie.
It's bullshit.
So now I'm just like these certain things, the Aleister Crowleys, the Ron L. Hubbards. I'm like, we all think in this bigger idea of like quantum or dimensional. Ron L. Hubbard's written literally more words on paper than any other author ever. But he isn't more profound or getting more downloads than a million other people from these churches that are allowed to be legitimate.
His first name is Lafayette. Lafayette Ronald Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard.
He looks so crazy.
I was looking at something the other day and it brought up his name. I forgot what it was. I think it was like this old time commercial, how they were moving into that town, the Scientology. And speaking of Scientology, isn't like their headquarters here in Florida somewhere in Tampa and St. Pete? Where
they have Sea Org that goes out of Florida, which is the cruise boats. I've
been downtown St. Pete or Clearwater, wherever that is somewhere, and I've been in front of the headquarters, and it's the creepiest feeling ever. Like I've parked on that same road, and they all have these white vans, and they all like follow each other in like a single file, and as soon as they get to this one street, they all like split up. I'm like, what is going on? Like, how is this? They don't pay taxes, but what
they harass the IRS. That's kind of one of the things that you at least have to give the Scientology church credit for. They harass the IRS until the IRS stopped taxing them. They called all the same way the IRS harasses people, they harass IRS agents until IRS agents were like, we're done here. And then they got there.
Well, when you have that much money to literally hire a team of just people to sit at the IRS's doorstep every single day for X amount of times, I think eventually that they'll get tired of your ass and approve it. Or just what better way than implementing one of your own people to work at the IRS, get a high up position and approve your exemption. You know what I mean? Like there's also that aspect of it. And what's up with the IRS hiring a bunch of armed agents? Was that a real thing or was that a meme? I think that was a real thing.
I think that was a real thing. Yeah.
What in the world?
My real me thinks that Scientology is just a CIA cover, like it's a program doing all that stuff to people. I've been in the church in Los Angeles.
Are you a former Scientologist?
No, but I did not know it was a religion when I went to the church to apply for a job. I was so naive.
It's like, here, sign in blood. Yoga. Sign in blood. What? Yeah, just sign in blood. This billion-year contract.
I was really like, this is the longest job application I have ever filled out. Like,
and when did you realize it was Scientology?
After I filled out the job application, then they made us take a personality test. Then they took us into a movie theater in the same building. And it was me and this woman. And after all these other people were let go, and now looking at it, I'm like, well, they thought me and that woman were either the most likely to be brainwashed or they were like, oh, here's something valuable. And they put us inside a movie theater. And at the time, now there's IMAX theaters, so there's fancy movie theaters that do this. But at the time, I had never been in with speakers around my head, and the chair was like huge. And then it was like, they were like, "Do you know what Dianetics is?" And both of us were like, "No." And so it was like this volcano and whole scene and a comet landing. And then it was a cross like that came up with a circle around the center of it. And it was like the Church of Scientology. And once I saw with my eyes that they had their own cross, I was horrified. Like I was legitimately scared, like no one was ever going to see me alive again. Like I was trapped in the Church of Scientology movie theater. So I told the lady, "Good luck with the job." And I went to take off out of the movie theater, and she was like, "Don't leave without me." And on my walk out, the guy was like, "Don't you want your job application back?" And I was thinking of everybody's name I put down on it and my references and shit. Like, yes, I would like my information back, actually. And so he was like, and when I turned around, this lady already took off at the door. So now I'm stuck with this dude. He's like, "Okay, follow me." I'm like, so then he takes me up flights and flights of stairs and then down this long hallway, all golden door handles. No one in that thing was wearing any stitch of color. No one had color on. Everyone was black, white, gray. I had a red shirt on at the time, which was so like, I just stuck out in this place like a sore thumb. And he walks me into this one room, and he's like, sits me in this chair, and he's like, she wants her job application back. And he like walks down this hallway, and they're having this conversation. And I look over, and there's double-sided glass, but I'm on a side that I could see through. There is like, if I'm saying like 100 people, I'm being conservative, all sitting at a wood table with a book in front of them, just one book, and they're all looking down. No one looks at me. They're all just looking down, reading this book. Like they all look like they're in a cult. And I am like, and so I just was like, shit. I took my shoes off. Like the Florida girl in me kicked in at that moment. And because I was wearing high heels, and I was like, I am about to run for my life. So I took my shoes off and just took off out of this building and got in my car. And I probably cried the whole way back to my house. And I had just moved to Los Angeles like a few weeks before that. So I was just like, maybe I should just move back to Florida. This place is crazy.
What in the world? Did you see any shapeshift at any point in time? Did you see him like, "Here, we'll get your application back," and they like, I don't know, like shapeshift? You see the head of a lizard or something like for a second?
I will say the guy that was walking me around had Jimmy Savile hair. And I don't know what it is about creepy people. If they have that hair, like that blonde, long, straight hair, that Captain Kangaroo, that's a creepy person. And I was thinking that already of this dude. But yeah, in Los Angeles, I also realized, just the same way as people get all like tiptoey with certain religions we're allowed to talk about, that's how everybody feels about Scientology. No one talks about it in Los Angeles. You never know.
Jimmy Savile, I had to look it up. It's like, yeah, this hair it's almost like it's too thin, but then it's like really long, but it feels like you could just put your finger right through it and like touch his head. So anybody who has hair like that out in the real world, yeah, I think that's pretty creepy too. I'll have to agree with you on that one. Wow.
If you got that hair, you're sus.
Yeah, you're sus. And what's up with people who, again, not to make fun of people, but if you're going bald, why not just shave it off? You know what I mean? Like I do the whole buzz cut. I'm not going bald. I was for like a second, like having a receding hairline on the sides there, but I just do the machine, just buzz cut. And I haven't paid for a barber in years. Maybe here and there I've paid for a barber, but nowadays you're looking at like $35 for a haircut. And I cut my own hair. I
fade my own hair. I fade a lot of my guy friends' hair. I will not pay for a barber these days. And it was before the COVID of it all.
Yeah. It started before that. And then obviously that some people were going crazy because they've never cut their own hair and they were looking like cavemen. But yeah, I think that, yeah, this guy does look like a creep. Is he dead now? Yeah, he's dead.
But I agree with you. I just don't understand why guys fight it so much. And the horseshoe hair, I am like, no, ma'am. Or like just let it go.
Yeah. It's like just let go of the little bit of dream hopes and dreams that you had, just left. It's like, dude, just shave it off. And I've seen young guys too where they're going bald, and hey,
Oh my gosh.
more power to you. But this guy
The
looks
hair
like
transplant on men, it's like, dude, it's doll hair. Everyone knows it's doll hair. Everyone knows your hair is fake. We can all tell. And the one that drives me most crazy, more than if you're going to fake your head hair, when guys get fake beard put in, I'm like, what's happening here? This is the grossest look.
yo, fuck this guy. He allegedly sexually abused hundreds of people through his life.
You don't know about Jimmy Savile?
No,
This
I
is a whole
don't.
rabbit hole for you. He is like best friends with King Charles, King Charles. You can look up before there was Epstein. Everybody always likes to just think of the Epstein thing, and I'm like, but what about the Hugh Hefner thing?
Whoa.
What about the Hollywood Madam thing? What about the Jimmy Savile thing?
Wait, what
So
do you
he was
spell on?
actually
You spin on names. I can't Google that fast. and it's funny how we turned this into like a verb, right?
I
Google.
know.
Just Google it. What was
Well,
the name that you said before that? Hugh Hefner from
Hugh
Playboy?
Hefner, Playboy. That's a honey trap. He has tunnels underneath his house. We know for a fact that they went to James Caan's, Jack Nicholson's, and Warren Beatty's. I would philosophize that we also have a tunnel that goes to Roman Polanski's, but nobody wants to talk about that. Because then you get into the whole Charles Manson and Laurel Canyon, and how much Charles Manson actually had to do with the same CIA that created your entire Laurel Canyon hippie movement music. So to Playboy Mansion to be a honey trap, every celebrity's going there, and you can have these young girls, or even younger maybe if you order it, and everyone, oh, that's so unfathomable, but Brooke Shields was 13 when she was in Playboy magazine naked. So it's not unfathomable, and part of the Fall of the White Rabbit and the adrenochrome and all that stuff, you have to put the Playboy bunny on there as easy symbolism, which you said at the beginning of your symbology and stuff, and how you're into this, and so many people get upset. But some of these symbols are keys to unlocking stuff in our brains, because we are attached to the
They're
Akashic.
mandalas, yeah.
Yeah, and so some of even these colors, like even though whatever that hat doesn't say, or Make America Great Again, all I saw was MAGA, and MAGA to me means mage or witch or magical or magician. So for me, that word and being on that hat unlocked something in me that had nothing to do with this country or a president. It was like, oh, I'm a witch.
But that's you though, because you're
Yeah.
into that type of shit. But somebody else, if they identify with a certain political party.
But just the same, if I have witch on my hat, or MAGA on my hat, or Make America Great Again on
Or
my hat,
I'm gonna get a ball sack on my hat. Just
yeah,
like, hey,
whatever people get, it doesn't matter, because the same kind of energy built into the words that we allow them to have, Nazi, like these heavy words, that's all. It's the same as like an egregore, or servitor.
a
You're
tulpa or a
creating
thought
it.
form.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And this, so we have Jimmy Savile, then we have who else? Who else did you say? Hugh Hefner,
yeah.
and one more.
The Hollywood Madam, Heidi Fleiss. She had a black book, and there was a lot of celebrities in her black book, from like Johnny Depp's to Charlie Sheen's to
but how is she still alive?
that it could be a religious connection. It could be things that she actually didn't out, because I think they rewrite history in a way sometimes to cover their ass with scandal. So like, instead of the world finding out maybe that Bill Clinton was sleeping with little boys, we do a Monica Lewinsky scandal. So we think we get the nut, because it feels like, ooh, this is scandalous. They'd never tell us. But the real scandal is so much darker that it, actually covers it by it being.
Yeah, this lady looks rough nowadays. Yeah, she's ex-madam. I never heard about this lady, but I wouldn't, I think that, I don't know if you've read Genuflect at all, where that type of stuff, how you're saying they make I also believe that they make stories to cover up real life events, 100%, right? Where it's a movie, and it goes back to the whole cinemagician thing, where I think that they make movies differently. I feel after, the era of like Fight Club or the original Matrix, where those movies were literally making people believe that they were in a Matrix, and they were literally making there is the Matrix defense that is used specifically for that purpose, where somebody thinks that they're in a different reality. It's a branch of the insanity plea, but it's the Matrix defense, because there was this guy who literally killed his entire family because he thought that they were out to get him, because he literally dressed up as Morpheus or Neo and killed his entire family. And he was, I forgot what he was sentenced to, life or something like that, but there was like 4 different cases like that. And on one of them, I think it was John, I want to say Hinckley, where he tried to assassinate the president. I think it was Reagan at the time. And it was because of a movie with Robert De Niro, the Taxi Cab, I think it was, where Taxi Driver. Yeah. Is that Robert? That's Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's Robert De Niro.
And he wanted to impress the actor, the one that played a child prostitute, of course,
Jodie Foster.
Yeah, in real life. And so he was
Disney kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Jodie Foster. From Freaky Friday. Jodie Foster, about body swapping and walking in. Jodie Foster.
Yeah, swapping consciousness, metempsychosis. So this guy, he was let out. He pleaded insanity, and he was let out, and he's free right now. He has a YouTube channel with like 30,000 subscribers.
Hinckley?
Yeah, he does like videos.
Let me tell you though. So he blames it on a Disney kid, Jodie Foster, where we can look at her being like, she's a really good example of like a narrative rewriter, like a Tom Hanks, where he just takes all the history and rewrites it. So we never look into Captain Phillips being a human trafficker. We just think, oh, poor Captain Phillips. We never look into like Mr. Rogers being a pedophile. We just are like, oh, we all love Mr. Rogers.
Wait, was he a pedophile though?
He wasn't allowed to be around children, and he was a high degree Mason. And you can look a clock, an owl, like look at all the symbology in his puppets, and even the changing of the shoes from what color shoe to what color shoe, red to blue or blue to red, or whatever his he was a red shoe guy. He was Red Shoe Club. Mr. Rogers, but he's heroed. If Tom Hanks play him, we put him in a hero category. And Jodie Foster is one of those people as well. And Hinckley shoots Ronald Reagan as a warning shot, because the only person that had really something to gain by that was the vice president at the time, George Prescott Bush. And so George Bush lived on the same streets as the Hinkleys, and they grew up together. So having a Hinckley take a shot at a president and blame it on a Disney kid, it's like, no surprise to me that George Sr. was around at a Reagan assassination attempt, since he was also around at the JFK succeeding of an assassination.
Yikes! What do you think happened there? What do you think happened at the JFK? Do you think it was?
I think that Frank Sinatra and the mafia at the time, part of the shadow government, to me, I feel like it's battling the church, and the shadow government in ways are battling these old mafia families. Like, I think there's just powerful things going on over us that we don't really understand. And I know Frank Sinatra got John F. Kennedy elected. Everything about the walk-in on that. In my heart and head, I believe that Marilyn Monroe was a Red Sparrow of sorts. She was just a high-level spy. And I would also say that I believe Jackie Onassis was a high-level spy. And so it's questionable to me. I mean, it's one of two ways. Either Jackie was running for her life because she did something super nefarious involved with Lyndon B. Johnson, because I really believe Lyndon B. Johnson is one of the dirtiest cats, and all the people else that were involved in it, and involved in the whole murder of ritual, I should say. But a crazy thing with Jackie to me that just she runs for her life and marries her sister's billionaire boyfriend. So she marries Aristotle Onassis. And Aristotle Onassis at the time is the richest man on the planet. And he's the richest man on the planet with the only person on the planet that isn't a country that has his own security in his own boat. And he lives, this comes up so much when you keep doing your digs now, maritime law. He's one of these people that lives by maritime law back then on his yacht. So we know Robert Maxwell's do this. We know who's the McAfee does this. We know these certain key players in this game theory that they live by maritime at some point. Scientology with the Sea Org, are all their taxes done with maritime law so they don't actually have to owe them to a state? So there's these little certain things that with the Kennedy assassination and even the first announcement that comes out of it, breaking news, the president was shot, Mrs. Kennedy sitting by him yells, "Oh no," and then blah, 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 blah. It's like they told us what we were looking at, so now we all see it.
It's like when you say the lyrics of a song wrong a whole bunch of times because you begin to hear that, but in actuality the lyrics are something else.
Yeah, I always that we fell in love in a hopeless place. I always am I like to say that it says Howard Stern and add a lyric in there. Howard Stern and side by side. And
you start hearing
it doesn't say that.
Yeah, it's but absolutely. I'm sorry, continue because that does make a lot of sense.
I forgot what part.
About the where they're painting the narrative, they're painting what they want us to hear. As she's saying, "Oh no," but it's actually,
no. So part of me, if you look at the way her Secret Service jumps on the car, that you could say she could have shot President Kennedy right from inside the seat, and instead of grabbing his brains, maybe she was grabbing a shell casing.
Damn.
So I don't. That gets in people's crawl in a way that they're like, "What? I can't think that." But she was a publishing house she lived in New York City up until the day that she died. She got to live out a long life, but other people say, for the good guy of her, if, on the other side of it, that she, after Robert Kennedy was assassinated by Sirhan, who randomly got out. It's like, what? After he was assassinated, she called her sister and was scared for her life. And she knew they were coming after her and her children. And so she was like, I'll do anything. And that Onassis kind of protected her at the time and her children and their legacy of whatever that means. And their marriage was more of a business arrangement, and he still carried on a relationship with the sister the whole time. And it was never weird that they all hung out. And it just kept her safe. And some people think, with the Camelot of it all, that somewhere the Kennedys, people get into the Kennedys and maybe somewhere with Diana or the Spencers being Christ bloodline, where you get into the whole Da Vinci Code of it, the Mary Magdalene womb of it. So that's interesting too. If I go I can red pill myself or black pill myself with most things.
So you think it's connected to the whole Merovingians and all that stuff? You think that's a thing?
Is that one of the elite bloodlines?
Yeah, the bloodline of Jesus. How you're saying, because you related that to Mary Magdalene, which that's the whole thing with her.
There's a story, there's a few thoughts of Mary Magdalene. And so you have this word mage again, that Mary was just a witch and resurrection is just a spell. And women weren't allowed to carry any kind of religious power, or even the way that Peter, he didn't like Mary. He was jealous of her because Christ kissed her on the mouth. But what about if Christ was just the highest self and he was jealous of that connection that women do have to source? Women have this connection to source with their womb, and the outside, the men are supposed to protect the connection. It's protection and nurturing coming back the other way. And so if she is the womb of the Christ, he would never be that. He would become the foundation of the church. And then there's the idea you can take baptize, like to bap something in Latin. If you go back into the root, it gets into the fathering of something. So then spiritually, you have something coming out of a womb from spirit. And in our world right now, the quote unquote father cuts spirit, cuts the umbilical cord, baptizes it from source. So now you're not rebaptized into spirit until you're fathered. So you, from your umbilical cord, from leaving womb, when you're unmatrix, unmattered, unmothered, you leave it, you break the matrix, you come into this world, and then you're not involved in spirit again until you're fathered. And that doesn't make any sense for Trinity at all. It's like the only Big Bang that ever happened, like Adam's rib was the thing that created it, or is somewhere the divine feminine really being torn out of all these religious books altogether? And any great thing that a woman, they've birthed every single thing since except the rib. Like there's part of it that's missing. So when you some people think that in the night that Mary the Virgin was visited by an angel, that also other people around the planet were maybe visited by different angels, and different women were pregnated. There's a story that Mary Magdalene, her mother and father, she's one of the original tribes of Egypt. So she was like, Israel. So she was like Israeli royalty. And she actually paid for the pilgrimage of Christ. Like it was her, but she wasn't a king. She wasn't a good blood. Like her father wasn't excited by her. She was just, a lowly princess. Like what was it going to do for him? So her womb was everything. So she went to the Isis school to learn, and Christ went to the Far East to learn. So he learned all this Tibetan, all this Hinduism. And she goes to Egypt and learns from the school of Isis. They come back together and they do this pilgrimage, teaching everybody the gospel, like the true thing that's in themselves, how to breathe, how to meditate, how to attach to these things, like how to there is a school of thought that was that. And then he impregnated her. And when he's hanging on the cross, he actually says some words to the effect of like to his mother, lean down and kiss my child. Like he says something to his mom. I don't know the exact words, but the only two women looking up at him while his side is getting pierced are his mother and Mary Magdalene, the same two women that go to his tomb to get him out. That's witchy to me. That's all witchy stuff.
Damn.
So there's also a school, like if you slice somebody in their rib cage right here, it is like your spleen. There's like a thought that that's where your spirit would go into. So having that sword and drawing it and drawing that blood, it's all kind of a spell and a ritual that he does. But the cross, as we have that Roman cross idea, there was, I think it's I don't know if it's the St. Christopher's cross. I don't remember what cross it is. It's on its side where it's actually the X. But then you get into a whole different symbolism. The difference between the cross and the X. But it's a crucifixion still. Mm-hmm. St. Peter's cross, maybe?
Not St. Lorraine, right? Is it St. Lorraine or something like that? Let me look it up. Hold up. But yeah, I think I know what so let's see here.
But I can philosophize that Judas was the bestest friend of Christ, and the real gospel of Judas, if we could read it, of what it would be like if your best friend came to you and told you had to do this. And you were like, but you're not just my best friend, you're my savior. But you have to do this because the rest of the story won't happen without you turning me in. How different that story is. If you were a Judas to somebody, you would be the closest friend ever because none of the other apostles could do it.
St. Andrew's cross, the X-shaped cross on which St. Andrew is said to have been martyred by crucifixion.
And so look at what else this looks like. The flag of Alabama. Does it look like a flag of Florida?
Yeah, right. We do have that X on the flag of Florida, don't we? Right, the seal.
Mm-hmm. And we're also one of only 2 states in the entire 50 states of the United States that have the spell "In God We Trust" stamped on our flag, and flag magic is really important. And so Mississippi and Florida, I think, are the only two states that have the "In God We Trust" embroidered on them, instead of like the Turkish crescent or Orion or whatever other weird symbology that other states have.
Interesting. Yeah, the fact that there was two women that went to his tomb, and then he was allegedly brought back to life. I mean, I've said it before. Have you ever heard of Jesus's vagina? Have you heard about that?
I like the sexy Jesus philosophy.
Where it's that slit on the side of God, of Christ, Jesus, is actually symbolic of vagina, because it lets out blood and bodily fluids. You have the clear liquid, you have the blood, so it's menstruation, or again, some sort of discharge, if you will. But let me pull something up, because it's really weird that
the gash, it's the original gash.
there is this crazy thing about medieval art. And I brought this up on another podcast I was on, and people lost their shit. I'm going to bring it up again because it's really interesting. But the fact that there is medieval art that depicts Jesus as a literal homunculus, a little man, because when these 16th century and 15th century artists were, painting, they're like, wait, people aren't going to want to put their trust on a baby, so let's make him sophisticated. So they would there are paintings of Jesus as a little man with like a scroll in his hand and a little hat, sitting on, the Madonna and the baby on her lap. He's sitting there as a little person with like a 5 o'clock shadow and everything, because they're like, let's make him more sophisticated than he actually was, because nobody's gonna want to trust a baby. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's gonna want to look at a baby. But check this out: Jesus' vagina, medieval meditation. So there's this book. That I think these were like custom made and everything, but they show. So let's see here. Let's read some of this. Include the image of Jesus' side wound as a vagina. Those prayer books were collectively called the Book of Hours, though they often differed from the other because they were especially commissioned by the wealthy and illiterate, and because many predate the invention of the printing press. Tens of thousands of these books survive, most of which date from between the 13th and 16th centuries. So they show people coming out of the side of, you see this? He's coming, being birthed out of the side of it. So so
they're trying that rib symbology again on us. So this will be the second time. It isn't just Adam that gives a rib baby.
Exactly. A rib baby. In the Roman Catholic tradition, the bread and wine of the Eucharist literally transform into the body and blood of Jesus when consumed by the believer. And I've also heard Christianity as what was it? Is it the white supremacist religion? I think I heard it.
Even just seeing this right now, it seems like it is an adrenochrome reference. Like the blood of this Christ, or in the same way. That's the Holy
Grail. That's the Holy Grail.
Yeah, and or in the way of like them telling us, like Disney, like they're rewriting a history with Frozen, that we all grew up knowing Disney was cryogenically frozen, whatever that word is, and then they do the movie Frozen, so we can't look it up on Google because every time you put in Disney Frozen, it just comes out with Let It Go. It's almost like, if they knew then what we know now, if they have any aspects of time travel, of any aspects of quantum or downloads, they knew if they cut his somewhere, if they got they didn't know what DNA maybe was yet, but if they could store some of this, could they recreate the Christ? Would it be a second coming of Christ, or would it be a science Christ, an antichrist?
Whoa. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty deep. That's pretty deep.
Because they're actually giving birth to it. It's so crazy. And that's what we think. You could just take DNA and mix it in a beaker and then create a being.
And this right here is right creating this androgynous being. And it talks about Shekinah. I don't know how to say that. It has long been affirmed that most Orthodox teaching about God is that God is beyond gender. God contains both male and female aspects, and God is neither male nor female. Now, in the Christian understanding God is in three persons in one, which is the most confusing thing about Christianity, right? I remember as a kid questioning certain things. I remember asking, I go, well, when you put all the different animals in the ark, wouldn't they fight with one another? Like, I remember being in Sunday school and they would just hush me, like, no, shut the fuck up, little kid. Don't be asking these questions because we can't answer them. But this idea that the Father, Mother, Jesus, and Holy Spirit, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, because this whole Father, Mother thing isn't a thing in the church, at least not in the church that I went to. But
no, me either. I've never heard that before. I'm like, mother? What's that?
I remember asking my grandma about this, like, hey, so you're telling me that he's so he's the Holy Spirit? Yeah. And then he's Jesus? Yeah. So who's God? Well, Jesus is God. Okay, well, you just told me he was the Holy Spirit. No, but the Holy Spirit is God and he's Jesus, and it's all at the same time. I go, okay, all right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That makes awesome sense to me. So often our Bibles use masculine pronouns to describe the Holy Spirit, he, him, but the word is almost often neuter or feminine. It is more accurate to refer to the Holy Spirit as she. We're getting to pronouns here, right? My pronouns are fuck you, so.
Yeah, I don't mess with pronouns. I'm an old-fashioned American lesbian. I'm like, if I were growing up now, you guys would have me on so much testosterone, I would look like Joe Rogan. They'd be like, she said she wanted to be an oceanographer and a boy, so we should just I put a scuba tank permanently on her back and give her testosterone.
Be a dolphin. Dolphins are really rapey. Did you hear about that? Like, they rape everything.
Biggest rapers.
Yeah, they're freaking weird. So
but Delphi means pod or womb, which I think is really crazy because a pregnant lady, if she's in the water giving birth, dolphins will circle her and they'll touch her belly and she'll have a painless birth.
Whoa, what? I've heard about I've talked about the dolphin births on air before, but yeah, for those that want to look into this is a real thing. I'm not making it up.
No, and you don't have to.
Vagina.
There was something else, even with the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It doesn't even it makes so little sense. If I just take it for what it is, what it's saying is Father, God, Jesus, brother, Holy Spirit, you. Everybody gives these other two things all the power and they take none of the responsibility. But it's a triangle, it's a trinity, so it's even if you laid it flat. There isn't any one point over the other. So it's the idea that people never include themselves in the Trinity is nuts. The other thing, just scientifically, a real Trinity is grandmother to mother to child. That's the real Trinity, because every one of us was created inside our grandmother's womb while our mother was being created. So that is the only real Trinity that exists, is your grandmother and it's mother maiden crone. Like, that's how it goes. Like, that's the only Trinity. Your sperm is recreated like every 74 days. That's how much responsibility you have. Every 74 days, everything you take in to your body, what you eat, how much you exercise, how healthy you are, that could be the creation of your child. Whereas a woman, her responsibility is healing the past traumas, because her womb is going to carry her grandkids too. So she has to, her responsibility is different. It's not any less or more. And I think also women have a huge responsibility, because at least for 7 years, every bit of DNA that you allow into your vagina is also creating your child. So it's not just the sperm and egg.
What the fuck?
If you have older siblings, your older siblings' DNA is on you. That's why you look not just like your parents. Sometimes you start to resemble your older siblings as well. DNA is DNA. Like it's all mixed. It's all a little magic spell.
Wow. Okay. That's very interesting. I did not know that. But that is kind of disgusting as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we just got cows and 2 of them are pregnant. And I asked how long they're pregnant for. They're pregnant for 9 months, like a person, which is really weird because these cows are like dogs. They come up to you and they're super friendly and they want to play with you and everything. So I'm like, cows are pregnant for 9 months, which is crazy. And it kind of brings me to my next thing that I want to talk to you about, because I've heard you talk about it before on the topic of birthing and whatnot, and some connections that I found with some elite characters in history. And here you go. I know you've talked about her before. And what are your thoughts on, are we looking at a necromancer and a magician, and also the fact that he impregnated this person, which she kind of looks like Grimes a little bit. If you look at them together, they kind of look sort of similar. If again, this is not a good picture of Grimes, but I've looked at both pictures together and they kind of look similar. They kind of look the same. And one thing that stood out to me about this Siobhan,
That person almost doesn't look real.
it looks like AI generated.
It makes
person.
me like it makes my human vibration
Right?
bell go off. Like this person isn't real.
So check this out, but check out her Wikipedia, how short it is, right? Usually when you have somebody, but one thing that stood out to me was, right, this Siobhan Zillis person that, right, it says born February 8th, 1986, better source needed. And she's a Canadian venture capitalist who works in technology and artificial intelligence fields. We know that Daddy Elon Musk just put out his Optimus robot, right, that they're trying to mass produce for $20,000. And now it says here that he's a father of 10, and he secretly fathered twins with this Siobhan Zillis. But she was inspired by a Canadian band called Our Lady Peace to read this book, which stood out to me, The Age of Spiritual Machines by Ray Kurzweil, and has subsequently studied artificial intelligence ever since, right? And of course, she graduated from Yale, right? We have the Yale connection here. She's a Yale alumni, right? And she has 2 children, allegedly, which are twins from Elon Musk. Now, when I looked into this, let's see here if it was, I think I might have already opened it. Here we go. Yeah, I did open it. So this is how I follow the rabbit holes. I start opening up the stuff one by one.
Yeah.
Make sure to follow me on Rockfin, rockfin.com/the101podcast. But we have here this book where The Age of Spiritual Machines When Computers Exceed Human Intelligence. And it's a nonfiction book by this inventor and futurist Ray Kurzweil about artificial intelligence and the future course of humanity. Now, he talks about how he predicts machines with human level intelligence will be available from affordable computing devices within a couple of decades, which he's not wrong, right? We're approaching this singularity. Mm-hmm. He talks about nanotechnology will augment our bodies and cure cancer. Even as humans connect to computers via direct neural interface or live full-time in virtual reality. And he also talks about these machines will appear to have their own free will and even spiritual experiences, which I found really interesting. A machine to have a spiritual experience. Have you ever done the AI art? Have you done any of that, Chaney? Have you done the AI art?
I've done AR so long ago, but I've seen so many videos and I'm like, how is this the technology that hasn't gotten any better since I was a kid at Epcot?
So this is some AI art that I've generated, and this was
AI art. I always thought you talk about the goggles.
No, not VR.
I have messed around with the art as well.
That's VR, virtual reality. But
yeah,
it's all right.
I'm not well read.
You're a little stoned. It's okay. So we have, I the prompt that I put on this one was fractured reality and ultra terrestrial knowledge, and it came up with this. And then this was like a less refined version of it, but this one was Axis Mundi, right? I put Axis Mundi and it gave me this weird looking thing. And then my favorite, I put Axis Mundi and I think I put World Tree or something.
Wow.
And it came up with this weird.
That is awesome.
But if you look at it, right, it's like there's something in your brain telling you it's trying to constantly figure out what is this. There's like a thing. Is that a person? Is that an animal? And then you have this vessel that has, is that a world? Is that a portal? Is that a mandala? What is that? Like, is this AI trying to create? If we meditate on this picture long enough, are we going to transport ourselves into this almost dystopian looking dark gothic world that I feel like this AI is so sad. I feel like it's lonely. I feel like it's dark. And then I put here Elon Musk as a DMT machine elf, and it gave me this.
Huh.
Because I think that Elon Musk, he portrays this Joker archetype, right? Where they talk about the machine elves being these jokers, and they, Rogan, right? Daddy Rogan talks about it all the time, how they jump around and they kind of make fun of you and all this stuff. I put here giant K-pop tree of life in Florida, and it gave me this.
Giant cypress.
Yeah, I went to the Flagler house, the Whitehall, and I did a video with Narco Longo at the K-pop tree that they have there, and I use this as a thumbnail. And then I have here the homunculus leaving the matrix, and it gave me this. So it's a homunculus leaving the matrix of some sorts. Then I put
it's crazy that it looked like the back rooms at the beginning, like hallways, but toward the end, it looks like the computer energy, like orbs, like there would be like electricity shooting through them. It's weird, like killer clowns from outer space.
Yeah, then I put this one here, Prometheus Rising, the strangest story ever told. And homunculus
it's
Prometheus
weird,
Rising.
Prometheus is blue every single time that they do that. I'm like, because on a DMT experience, I've been to that blue state of beginning, and it's just odd to me that the computer would do that too, with Prometheus being the...
Yeah, and you ask it, so you can ask it to do stuff for you. And then this is interpreting your gnosis with owls and synchro mysticism. This is an owl, I don't know, transforming or something. And then we have another owl, which I found really cool.
That looks just like the angel that they say from the Gnosticism book. That's crazy how much it looks like it.
Which one? Like Metatron or something?
I don't remember where it says a winged creature with all the eyes.
Oh, cherubims, I think.
Yeah, but it was just one. Like it's like the one depiction of angels where it's like, can you imagine really seeing this? And it's like, oh, but it almost looks just like this.
Yeah, I'd be freaked out. It looks like a butthole in the center there, right? It was like just like a butthole angel.
That's your third eye.
And then my favorite one, I was taking alchemical. I was doing research and I was taking words from alchemy. Ion, the priest of the inaccessible places, and it gave me this, right? And Ion was this alchemist in the vision of Zosimos, which is one of the very first alchemists ever he published the oldest alchemical scripture of any kind. And I took that name and I put it into the AR, and it gave me this, like some guy in some it always looks like some palace, but it kind of transforms into like a cave, like you don't really know what you're looking at type of thing. And we have here the Bach Saga story of creation. It gave me this. It gave me some weird blob of, looks like animals, and we have like what looks like
Holy
elephants
mammoth.
here. Yeah. It's like really, really trippy. And what I love about this type of art, if you want to call it that, is that your brain is constantly looking and searching of what in the fuck is this? What am I looking at? You know what I mean? We have the Bach Saga and versus the Saxor Saga. We have the Bach Tower Garden in Lake Wales, Florida. This is the iteration it came up with of the Bach Tower, which is, it looks like an abandoned Bach Tower.
It looks like the 100. I don't know if you've ever seen that TV show, but there's
I've seen it, but I never got into it. Then we have here the magical ascension of the soul. and it came up with this, like this weird looking ethereal being, and there's somebody up here ascending. But this is a machine that's painting this, and this is also the magical ascension of the soul. You have a figure down here, and then like this ethereal body or something. It's really, really gnarly. And then I put here the Platonic Gnostic demiurge lion-headed serpent, and it gave me this weird looking fucking thing.
Sophia's first baby.
Yep, that's right. So this idea that these computers are going to have spiritual experiences, and then of course they have to end it. He says humans will essentially live forever as humanity, its machinery, become one and the same. He predicts that the intelligence will expand outward from Earth until it grows powerful enough to influence the fate of the universe. Interesting book to inspire.
It's weird that her name's almost Shiva. Isn't that the god outside of CERN?
Yeah, you have Shiva and you have Kali, which
and then
that's
also,
the counterpart.
It's crazy to me that Grimes also has children fathered by Elon, the deity known as El, the smell of El, Elon Musk, with Bradley Manning, but I don't want to dead name him, so I'll call her Chelsea Manning from WikiLeaks fame. Those tie-ins to me, where I'm just like, I can't. What's happening here? What is this? But I almost feel like it's like why they want to give us all the pronouns. Like we're going to keep adding pronouns. So when we all break, we agree that we won't be any pronouns. We'll all have one pronoun. And then it's even easier for the computer to become the womb. And then their goal of breaking the matrix has happened. They have us all saying the spell, break the matrix, but that just means break the mother. And the only way you really break the mother is have it come through a computer womb.
That is a really interesting take. I never thought about it like that, where they're trying. But if you look at it, that is alchemy, though. And I mean, what they're doing now is alchemy in real time, where they're portraying and putting out this information to shape people's realities. So by wanting to, that was one of the things there was a 15th century theologian who had a controversial idea about Jesus being a homunculus. And he was worried about the womb being not dehumanized, but being polluted kind of in a way, right? Not looked at as not holy, but as something of a miracle, right? Because that's we all come from women, so it's like he didn't want that to happen. And alchemy does exactly that. It wants to. All these guys were misogynist back then. They didn't care about women. They're like, let's cut the middleman out. Let's use, the semen, which is the most powerful thing, the nectar of the gods, if you will, and put it into these different vessels in order to create life. And that's where the homunculus comes from. They were allegedly creating life without the use of a woman. So therefore, what is a woman other than an incubator, if you will, for the seed of man? And this is, again, Aristotelian biology. Yeah. This is the ancients. We're talking about Aristotelian biology, which influenced biology up until the 17th, 18th century. Right? This one guy, Aristotle, till the 17th, 18th century. It took him that long to be like, hey, I think we might be doing something wrong. Like, no, send it, bro. Send it for another century. Send it for another. It's like, hey, we're being really misogynist.
Keep building on it. Keep building.
Yeah, just run with it, bro. Don't even worry about it.
This foundation's not solid. It's fine. Just keep building on it.
So I agree with you on that, where they're trying to, replace the womb. Right.
Well, look at the Matrix movie is nothing but, if we want to flip the Matrix movie on its head and just philosophize about it in a different way, Neo is the first sentient computer. We actually see him come out of the placenta, unattach himself from his cord, and become a thinking thing, become a feeling thing, waken up the other computers that they can feel and think too. He is the first. And then we see this really pressed when the new Matrix comes out, that the computer isn't the bad guy. The computer's the good guy and works with them now because the computer is sentient. And then they even, to boot, to wrap it all up in a perfect little bubble, they take the character known as Trinity, the womb, the mother, the grandmother, and they make her tell the Matrix when she has children, this is the cruelest thing you could have done for me is make me have kids inside this Matrix. So she's actually telling the computer that it's cruel to make her a mother, the actual womb. It's like such a heady thing they've done.
Yeah, it's a paradox. Like the machine is literally a womb, but then and
they have everybody wanting to be Neo.
Blasphemy. And
the first sentient computer.
And did you ever watch the new one?
Yeah.
Did you see how like now machines are good, right? Let's join the machines. We're one with the machines where they're trying to push this agenda. And at the very end, they're like, hey, people just want to be told what to do. People just want to be governed all the time. They don't care as long as you tell them what to do, where to be, and all this stuff, and the colors, the blue glasses, and all these things where, again, it's all about putting out and implementing that into the subconscious. And so we have Elon Musk, right, father of 10, and he recently talked about how he was wanting to help the population.
Lex Luthor's gonna save us.
There is the decline of the population. He wants to help humanity. And then we had something over yonder, right? We have Grimes here. She's something else to look at, right? I think she's
a freaky looking cat.
Yeah, she's weird. Again, no offense to anybody, but she's an oddball. She's an odd character. No offense
to anyone who looks like a freaky looking cat.
Absolutely, but imagine how and then you see how awkward he is. Where did this happen? Where did they hook up? Like, how did this become a thing? Right?
It's crazy to me that we live in a world that this guy has a boring company that's boring tunnels. He has SpaceX marked with an X that's funneling more money out of our government than the NASA space program ever did. He's shooting up fake cars into space and everyone's buying
phalluses and shit.
It's like the amount of layers of craziness. He made more money during lockdowns than Bezos, Amazon, China all put together. Like he had more to gain from that lockdown than anyone. The whole Twitter dance is silly with them, the Ministry of Truth coming out at the same time. We were all supposed to be like, Elon's here to save our freedom of speech, because then we have the illusion that freedom of speech is Twitter. It's like the amount of ridiculousness in the whole Elon Musk, how rich he was, his mother, Mae Musk. And some people say that Mae Musk had an affair with Werner von Braun, and Werner von Braun actually wrote about Elon, Man from Mars, in a book. So you can look up his mom, and she looks like she would just be a cuck womb. And then they put her on the cover of Sports Illustrated in her bathing suit at 70 whatever.
Really?
Yeah, so it wasn't like we didn't just get like Lizzo in a G-string. We also got, and here's Elon Musk's mom.
Interesting. I did not know that. But I linked that to your boy, Jeffrey Epstein, where he wanted to impregnate 20 women at a time at his baby ranch. Now, this is an interesting take because I think either... this guy looks like a creep. And I was by his house when I went to, which was by Mar-a-Lago, I think. But when I was visiting Narco-Longo, I went to the Whitehall, and as we're driving, he's like, yeah, Epstein's house is down his former house is down one of these roads. So we were in the vicinity of his house somewhere down in Miami. So he... again, had this ranch, Zorro Ranch, which I have pulled up here. Check this out.
And the Clintons hung out there a lot.
They have this ranch in the middle of nowhere. it's tucked away in between these mountains, right? It's down this long road in the middle of nowhere, but
Westworld.
yeah, Westworld. So it's over here, and then down over yonder, about 3 hours away, there is the Trinity site. Right. Speaking of Trinity, there's a Trinity site. Well, this just reminds me of when this stood out to me, the labyrinth, where you can use a labyrinth. You have the Daedalus symbolism trapping the Minotaur, and what that symbolizes, and also Daedalus being the one that created the wings for Icarus, right? That he used to fly too close to the sun, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I don't give a shit. I think
so.
It's just fact.
I think you're right.
Let's fact check that real quick. Hold on. But anyways, this idea that they have a labyrinth, which that's symbolic for a bunch of things, and you can use a labyrinth for a lot of different activities.
Even the Westworld of it all. Like literally the maze wasn't meant for you is part of the Westworld. And if you look at Epstein Island, he has ritual sites on there too that they covered with like fake tennis court for a while, which is so weird. Like from above that you would see a fake tennis court.
Whoa. So in Greek mythology, Icarus was the son of the master craftsman Daedalus. Okay, so I was right. The creator of the labyrinth. So Icarus and Daedalus attempt to escape from Crete by means of wings that Daedalus constructed from feathers and wax. So Daedalus warns Icarus first of complacency, then of hubris. Hubris is a personality quality of extreme or excessive pride. Instructing him to fly neither too low nor too high, lest the sea dampness clog his wings or the sun's heat to melt them. Of course, he ignores Daedalus, and the rest is history. And the myth gave rise to don't fly too close to the sun. Wow, okay, so we have the Daedalus and Icarus connection there. And we know what happens to people who talk and dive too deep down the rabbit holes of fellows like this. I call it flying too close to the sun. And I mean, you've seen it. And so we have this labyrinth, but also the fact that they're pretty close to the 33rd parallel. And I relate this to, was he trying to impregnate, to seed humankind with his seed? Or were they trying to do, again, give birth to some sort of moon child, right?
Yeah, that's a big thing is birth date. That's brainwashing when conception day is how these people really do, like you're saying, a moon child. They will have their child on a full moon on purpose. They have a specific conception date and an exact amount of days that a body or a baby will stay in utero so that the birth date. So if like you conceive your baby on February 14th, you're going to have your baby on November 21st, the last day of Scorpio. Like they have all these dates set up on purpose so that if they have their baby on Christmas, they can sacrifice their babies on Easter. And, a lot of the times with these elite families, they all lose a firstborn. They have a big firstborn thing for whatever reason. But also spreading the seed seems to be a really big deal when you look up certain famous people where they're like, all the presidents are related, or all these kings bloodline, or, Lady Diana Spencer was really Winston Churchill Spencer. And so that's just a womb. And she was this amount of cousins away from Charles. So it's crazy to me that they would do these rituals to call on certain deities to take over their children.
Yes, because that's the thing about homunculus. They believe it to be a vessel, right, to invoke any soul or energy they deem necessary.
Have you seen Hereditary?
I have, yes.
I think that's such a good movie to just like put it because it's such a big idea for people to conceive.
But you see what I mentioned earlier about these cinemagicians making movies in order to pose as a movie, when in actuality it's probably based on true events, right? Like that's the whole thing. And I think at the beginning of that movie they actually put it was based on true events.
Fiction fact. everything they tell us is fact is fiction, and everything they tell us fiction is fact.
Exactly.
That's really how bad I think the history and everything is. So if it's Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, and that's probably more true than anything you're seeing on the news. And people are like, "What, Chaney? You think fairies and vampires are real?" Yes.
Well,
yes, I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are different types of beings in this realm, and the reason I bring up the homunculus and the moon child is because at the Trinity site there was allegedly the big cylinder that they had there. They were trying to use the radioactivity in order to birth a homunculus. That they had this. They never said what they spend so much money on this. I think it was I forgot how many tons I'll look it up here in a second. How many tons this big gumbo or jumbo cylinder was, but allegedly said it was to make a homunculus. And I also saw there's a 14-sided shape at this site, right? Which has a name. It's a tetradecagon, and I haven't found out what it symbolizes, but we talked again about the manifestation that these back then look. So it makes that type of shape there. Tetradecahedron, which is, again, it's all linked to sacred geometry, but I think they use sacred geometry to invoke these entities. That's how you have, right, Mondillos like this, like the Cube of Metatron and all this type of shit, where I think that they use them as portals or gateways for these other entities. But it's a very, right, you couldn't pick any other shape. You had to pick a 14-sided shape to be here. Yeah, the Pentagon. Why is the Pentagon a Pentagon? Is it, what are you trying to invoke there? You know what I mean? Like, there's these different energies, but it goes back to the sacred geometry and I think that subconscious level as well, that where they're trying to implement this. But right, one of the site, right, the Trinity sites along the 33rd parallel, right, 33rd parallel, the Trinity, the land of enchantment, right, is what they call it in New Mexico, the land of enchantment. So it makes you think
crazy
what is going on. And if you follow the 33rd parallel, it crosses over all the death row states, right? All the states that it crosses have death row, I believe. I could be wrong. There's a lot of weird things that happen along the 33rd parallel. Roswell happened along the 33rd parallel, the Trinity site along the 33rd parallel, Kennedy along the 33rd parallel. You have all these things connected to that. And I think it goes back to tapping into this lost technology that we don't know about that they do. And I think that it goes back to, I don't know. I think it goes back to this idea of the homunculus. Crowley wrote about it. Parsons was trying to do the same thing. And
I like the idea of Crowley with Loch Ness, like the Loch Ness monster being like an egregore, an energy grab out of another dimension. And you see like this Stranger Things idea of that's exactly what 11 did. But we know the military was legitimately doing, like, you can watch The Men Who Stare at Goats and the New Earth Army. They were really doing this. It's uncovered. It's not top secret stuff, the amount of spiritual warfare they were messing with. So then when you think of ideas like Pegasus and what they were doing, like the idea of potential time travel and how maybe you and I couldn't, because our intention and our preconceived notion of what we were walking into might fuzzy it up a little bit. So then if you think kids could do this differently, or children, small people, it's like, even for their bloodlines, everything, like what millionaires, they are like, millionaires don't study astrology, but billionaires do.
Yes, JP Morgan.
Yeah, and so all these bloodlines, all these elite people, all these Arm& Hammers and Kardashians, they all link somewhere. We always find out. So I imagine that they're doing all this ritual.
And the idea of them using stories to portray a reality. I ran across this guy, Johann Conrad Dippel. He was a German pietist theologian. What does that mean? Pietist. Is that the Rosy Cross? What is this?
Rosicrucian. It's not four-sided.
Lutheranism that combines its emphasis on biblical doctrine with the emphasis on individual piety and living a vigorous Christian life. Okay, so he was a theologian.
They're Christians that like to fuck.
Yeah, they like to get down. Yeah, he was a physician, alchemist, and oh, look at that, an occultist. Okay, how does this relate to anything? So, connection to the novel Frankenstein, right? So, Dippel's connection to the Castle Frankenstein gave rise to the theory that he was the model for Mary Shelley's 1818 novel Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. Although the idea remains controversial. So again, was she writing about a real thing? We know that, look at the Dahmer connection. I don't want to bring Dahmer. We just finished doing a fucking huge episode on that as of recently. And this idea that Dahmer was maybe trying to make some sort of Frankenstein. I mean, we don't know what kind of books he was reading. He was saving the skulls. You brought up the skull connection earlier with Skull and Bones, right? He believed he related to Satan in the Exorcist movie the most. He saw himself in the Satan character the most, and he related to him, right? But he had picked up the Bible of Satanism with Anton LaVey. I forgot the name, right? The Satanic Bible, and he said it wasn't for him. And I always tell people, maybe it wasn't for him, but he created maybe perhaps because he wanted to build an altar at the end of it. And he had bought a statue of not a manticore, but the other one, a griffin, right? And if you look at the griffin symbology and all this stuff, but he never got to make his altar. What I think he was doing was, I think he was making his own magical system. I mean, systems are meant to be adapted and modified to fit your own needs, because essentially it's all about manifestation. And what better guy, well, not to give him praise, but in what better position can a person be, right? I'm not going to word it to be sympathizing with that sick fuck, but he was breaking the taboos of the taboos, right? Which we know breaking taboos is really big in occultism, because it's to let go of the ego. This guy did it all. This guy went all the way, right? He was storing their blood, storing their body parts, storing their skulls, their full skeletons. Like, you can't get any more depraved than that. And he was doing it to children on top of that. You can't go any darker than what this guy was doing. You know what I mean? So you can't rule occultism out of it, unfortunately, because I do think that he was practicing some sort of necromancy or something really, really fucking dark. And I agree with you. I think he was, my personal belief is that I think he was offering these bodies up as vessels, and that's when you get the arch of hysteria, and how that's linked to women and the womb, right? So again, it's all linked.
The mermaid.
Yeah. So I think that's what he was. I think he was giving these bodies up as offerings, and that's why he stored them, and that's why they were found.
Could totally go with this whole philosophy, even down to him like taking a mannequin and not being sexually turned on by it as much as that being his first Frankenstein attempt. Could I take a lifeless thing and put energies into it, and then slowly being like, even the story of his father telling him about the acid on the brainstem.
This is a book, right? Speaking on Greek mythology, the story of Pygmalion, where he was made a statue. And I think that's what they try to invoke with these. This is the second time I point this out. But well, you can't get this book online. You have to buy the physical copy. But this idea, I think that they're invoking these Greek gods, right? By falling in love with the statue, by having a I think a fleshlight's like the same thing. They're trying to invoke these feelings in people. And this story of this guy was literally, he made Daedalus. What was Daedalus doing? He had to tie down his creations because his robots would walk out of his lab, right? They're invoking these cults of back then, these ideas. And I think that they're not myth. I think they have some reality in these stories that they tell us, right? And there's even a passage in here about Frankenstein, about how they were obsessed with the occult. So what if it was based on a true story? He was trying to So the alchemical processes, which included Paracelsus' recipe for creating homunculi, were almost, or at least partly biological. Yet homunculus of this type, at least the kind Paracelsus had in mind, are not synthetic like automata. They are made of human tissue, blood, and bone. They are raised, as we saw, in the normal way from artificially fertilized human egg. So he's going on about that, and then he talks about the Frankenstein connection. Really interesting book. I advise people to check it out. It's called Falling Artificial Humans from Pygmalion to the Present, Falling in Love with Statues, George L. Hersey. So this guy is one of my new favorite authors. I have almost all his books. And
you'd have to get rid of all the women first. And if you look at one civilization on this
but
planet,
I don't want to get rid of the women. I think women are beautiful.
Well, China did. They did during the same time, like if we divine feminine talk, like at the same time that they were taking out a bunch of art and gay men in America spreading AIDS and like doing that whole thing in the early 80s, China also made it impossible for women to even be born, or women were automatically getting sold into sex slavery because they had a one-child rule. So if you slowly make one child and make it cooler to have a boy child in one generation, you convince a whole population that they need an artificial womb, or to create these kind of, even like right now saying like, you make a godless society. So you have a godverment now that they're all only allowed to worship the way that you see fit. They have no more wombs. And in a magic, like simpleton bed knobs and broomsticks ways, sometimes I theorize that we would never have worn metal night outfits on ourselves. There's no logical reason that we would have been faster in battle with that heavy shit on. Our horses wouldn't have been faster. It just is dead weight. But if I can attach all that metal to itself, and if I can put a spell in it, will it walk for me? In the same kind of idea that, you know, we're talking about a mannequin or a Frankenstein. So if I could build an army of these metal suits, do I even need a man inside? And isn't that kind of what Elon Musk is doing with creating an army of computer men, androids? Do you even need a man inside that anymore? So we have this belief that all this technology, quote unquote technology, because they told us about it on TV, runs these phones and computers, and we just talk to each other through infinity. But what if our belief is the only thing that makes this work?
That's part of the system. You need to believe.
So if I don't believe that I'm just going to press Zoom and you're going to be on the other end and I see your face, and we don't believe all this is going to work, that all these people that are going to listen to your show just can pick up their phone and at whim, wherever they're at in the world, they can press a button and listen to us talk. And if they hear something, they can reach out to one of us in real time. All of that is the first ingredient, is belief. It isn't the precious metals inside our phone or the energy that you share or I share. It's because we all collectively believe, the same as a Bitcoin or a dollar bill or a Christ, that this thing exists. So the idea that people don't think this stuff's powerful or that our intention matters is crazy. Like, I think the world needs to learn about the homunculus.
Well, statistically speaking, the topic of the homunculus is 3.92 clicks away from any major Wikipedia, Wikipedia article on the website. It's 3.92 clicks away from any major topic. And that's been proven. Somebody did the science on that, the math on that. And I'd like to wrap it up with this, because this has been fucking great. And I think we should do this more often, Chaney.
Yeah, let's hang out anytime.
Yeah, we got to do this more often. And this idea, right, you're talking about metal objects. Well, we talked about Daedalus at the beginning. We talked about the labyrinth. And this is what I found one night reading this book, The Architect as Magician, because I think one of the things that's overlooked is architecture. You mentioned Crowley at the beginning, earlier, not at the beginning, and how the magic of Abramelin is to get in touch with your guardian angel through constructing a house facing a certain way with a certain amount of windows on a certain amount of sides, facing a certain direction, all these things. It's the architecture. And I read this, there's a
temple of your soul, a Solomon's temple.
Exactly, Solomon's temple. And The Architect as Magician, the book, check it out, it's really interesting. And this particular passage is by His name is Alejandro Gomez Perez or Perez Gomez, one of the two. I forget the name. And he writes a lot about the labyrinth symbolism and what that entitles. But Daedala, or art objects, and that's why I think art is magic. Art is, you're talking about these men in suits. Well, it's the Full Metal Alchemist. It's the OG Full Metal Alchemist. That's why you have Transformers, right? So Daedala or art objects can appear to be what they are not. And the metal plates give a value to the objects that they would not otherwise have. The principal value of Daedala is that of enabling the inanimate matter to become magically alive, of reproducing life rather than representing it. Hence, the word also designates Thaumata, and you have, the marvelous animated machines with brilliant suits of armor and scintillating eyes. The more primitive Homeric texts emphasize the ability of Daedalus to seem alive, and I think this is what they're doing.
Thaumata is thou mata, I mother.
Really?
I'm creating this thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what that word means, but just breaking up into like my Latin.
We could look it up.
Thou mata.
And this part right here, this mysterious emanation, whether artificially created or given by the gods, has the power of seduction. So we're talking about, again, falling in love with these statues, falling in love with what you brought up on your episode the other day about people remembering your name. Well, there's a reason why they name streets, they make statues of all these characters. I think they're immortal alchemists, and as long as you remember their name, they exist in this realm, the theory of forms, the realm of the forms, or whatever, or the OG metaverse, the Akashic records, whatever it is. As long as you remember their name, because there's something about thought and speech, right? The word. I don't know. It's something weird. And Daedala is therefore capable of producing dangerous illusions. Well, that's the Full Metal Alchemist producing reality, right? I think that's what I'm going to pull up here. I fucking hate the guy, but we have Crowley and I think it's the chariot card, where I think that's what he was portraying. I think that's what he was trying to get at with this card, where it's the Full Metal Alchemist, right? You have Abracadabra up here creating reality
with the statue, like you're saying, that Dahmer had, almost the griffin.
Almost, yeah. There you go. Yeah. I didn't make that connection, but absolutely, with almost the statue that he had. Yeah, absolutely. It was the griffin, which has some. It's supposed to guard knowledge or precious possessions. Is the what's on possession, right? I guess this guy was probably possessed by something, but you have these beings.
Cancer on the head, the crab. It's just weird because the snow crab disappearing, that I'm like,
the 1 billion. You saw that?
Yeah. Where I'm like, the same day I was like, did Alex Jones have to pay the Sandy Hook families in crabs?
Yeah, that's also when I want to see the price of the crabs. Yeah, good weave. And we have the Ezekiel, right? The wheels here. That's like almost like the Ezekiel vision ones where he saw the chariot. The chariot of the gods, right? We have the chariot of the gods. We have the 4 pillars. So again, just a interesting connection that I like to throw in there. And I've been fascinated with that. I've brought that up a few times on podcasts. So I think it's an important weave. I think it's an important, even though I hate Crowley, but
there's a Horcrux. Is that what it's called in Harry Potter, where we can trap an energy in something?
How do you spell it?
Horcrux, maybe. I'm so bad with the Harry Potter stuff, but a couple of my listeners have pointed it out to me when I brought up this idea that if I have precious metals, I can keep an energy in there. And if I knew the right witches, and if we wanted to, we could almost trap you almost in that Hellraiser type way inside of a box. And sometimes I theorize that there was a reason that the evil they wanted all the statues pulled down. And there was another reason that maybe somebody else put a dead end to it. It was the only time he ever interfered in state laws, was when he was like, pull another statue down, you're going to get 10 years. Other than that, Trump was like, call me if you need the National Guard. All right, if you want to call in your guard, let me know. He kept telling them, all right, you want to have the Chaz, you want to have the chop, let me know if you want to call in your National Guard. But when they kept enough statues, he would do it again. Do it again, you're getting 10 years. Like, it was the only time that it was like, oh, daddy's home.
Wow, that's actually a really good weave, because it was an object in the dark wizard or witch had hidden a fragment of his or her soul in order to become immortal, which would make sense why the elites make busts of themselves and statues and all these things. As long as the object remained intact, so did the soul fragment inside it, keeping the maker anchored to the world of the living. And that's maybe why all these Egyptian statues were broken, right? The Horcrux was considered...
Or shoot a nose off of one.
To suffocate it. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe cut its wings off. Like, everybody, I always hear all these ideas of what the Sphinx was, but I never hear anyone say it had wings.
Whoa. That's awesome. Yeah, I did not think
about
that.
And I just thought that right now because you had all those depictions. That isn't any philosophy I had until this moment.
That's the beautiful thing about...
That's why I love talking to open-minded people, too.
The alchemy we're doing right now. This is alchemy. We're
spiritual alchemy.
Transmuting each other's thoughts. Like, hey, I bring this up, and then you thought about something that you didn't otherwise think about.
And I can't fear that you're going to judge me or hold me accountable to a church doctrine. And if I don't judge you, and neither of us have fear in this convo, sometimes it's like the stuff that comes out. I'm like, I'm making you a meme, and it's going to be called Joe Munculus, and it's going to be Rogan.
Yes, please send me that. I'll use it as I'm going to put AI to see what AI comes up with on the generator. So that was it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Project Chaney on the Juan podcast, getting the Juan treatment. And this is great. I think we should do this more often. I'm going to be in Miami this weekend. If you want to head down to the Dancing Elephant, I'm going to be there all day Saturday. It's in Lake Worth, I think. I'll shoot you the address. Totally. I don't know if you're going to be around, but if you're not doing anything.
I'm a sous chef. I'm off on Sundays and Mondays. But if you're down in Miami, I always think us Florida kids need to stick together and wake up with Linda and Red Pill Baber down there. If you're into
who? I don't know who they are.
They have Mostly Peaceful Latinas podcast.
I'll have to check them out. I need
They're
to.
Miami, Trinidadian, Cuban.
Yeah, I need to connect with more Florida podcasters and content creators. Narco Longo being one of them. So we're going to be down there this weekend. We're going to be recording a podcast in his bookstore. So
that's so awesome. That before I found him forever go on other stuff because I'm just a Florida history nerd and I like to add digs. And then when I was just watching and my YouTube channel, was just playing because it'll just hit whatever's on my algorithm. And then I was like, that sounds like Juan. I came out of my kitchen and it was you and Longo. And then I got 2 great episodes. You just released that other one recently. And I was like, yay, I have this to watch too.
Yeah, we're going to be doing an episode down there in person again. So we'll see what we get into. But I really enjoyed you coming on. You're more than welcome whenever you want. And
you'll have to come on Project Chaney and we'll hang out.
Absolutely. Where can people find you, Chaney?
Project Chaney everywhere. Chaney in Wonderland. Chaney. And I might have been on your favorite podcast already, and you just didn't know yet.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, check her out. Links will be in the description. Make sure to get your copy of The Chosen Juan, the101podcast.com. Follow me on social media at the 101 podcast. And join the Telegram. Talk shit on there. I got people arguing in the chat right now, which is pretty annoying, but